The new job creation law, Indonesia is progressively ensuring the policy reform to create quality jobs through investment. Let's be part of Indonesia's growth and progress. Invest in Indonesia now.
Payment for order flow is controversial in the USA. It is prohibited on UK, Canadian, and other markets, but not when trading in the US. In the US, a market maker pays your broker to trade with your US stock order at a price he decides, but not at Interactive Brokers. We do not sell your order to a market maker. We try to match you up with an institutional order at a better price.
In a world full of uncertainty, there's one thing you can rely on. The world's #1 broker. Dedicated to innovation, superior trade execution, award-winning platforms and services, renowned for reliability, passion for excellence, driven to succeed. Trade with the best. Trade with the pros. FX Pro. Trade like a pro.
Well, it's really a reminder, isn't it, just how sensitive the markets are to any commentary about trade. We did see some pressure on the yuan, we did see some pressure on the futures. That is now being reversed.
People are talking about Bloomberg surveillance.
There's some guy out on Twitter who says, I look like I'm on.
I noticed that.
Do you think I need a lift? Is it time that
What did he say about me? What did that particular gentleman say about... Let's have a look. One of them is near 101 years of age.
Which one would that be?
The other has an ego in the orbit of Mars. Who's that?
I have no idea.
Mrs. Lisa, the only chance to productive conversation. It's a fairly accurate summary of this show, isn't it, Tom?
The eyes, or should I do the whole thing?
Well, it's really a reminder, isn't it, just how sensitive the markets are to any commentary about trade. We did see some pressure on the yuan, we did see some pressure on the futures. That is now being reversed.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, thank you. Iran has dramatically increased its stockpile of highly enriched nuclear fuel. That's according to a report from the International Atomic Energy Agency. The country also continues to stonewall international monitors, setting the stage for a new round of failed diplomacy. Negotiating teams will return to Vienna November 29th in search of a way to lift U.S. sanctions on Iran in exchange for a cap on its atomic program. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is warning tensions over Taiwan risk leading to a miscalculation between the United States and China. Both nations have stepped up activity around the island. The U.S. has significantly boosted engagement with Taiwan, and China has increasingly tested the island democracy's air defenses. Lee says while there won't be a war overnight, it's not a static situation, in his words, and the risk of miscalculation is real. New restrictions are targeting the unvaccinated in Europe. Germany wants to limit workplace access to people who are inoculated, recovered, or provide a negative test. And those who have refused shots are increasingly banned from cafes and hairdressers. Ireland this week extended vaccine certification beyond restaurants and bars to cinemas and theaters. And Austria has a lockdown on the unvaccinated, restricting their movements to work and shopping for essentials. Global news 24 hours a day on on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thank you, Mark. From the beginning, President Biden is committed to finding ways to pay for his Build Back Better plans, largely by increasing taxes on what he calls big corporations and wealthy individuals. To take us through the current proposals, we welcome now Stephen Rosenthal. He's Senior Fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. Stephen, it's great to have you back with us. Let me start with that point about taxation, about really redistributing the wealth here a bit. President Biden certainly set out to do this. They wanted to repeal the Trump tax cuts. How much have they gotten done in the proposals as they sit right now?
Well, President Biden has scaled back significantly the tax increases that he expected to implement. Corporate tax rates were slashed from 35 to 21% under President Trump's tax plan, and Biden proposed to return them halfway to 28%. That's been dropped. Individual tax rates have been reduced from 39.6% at the top to 37%. And again, Biden proposed to increase those rates. That's been dropped. And so the consequence of dropping some of the core elements of Biden's tax plan is that there's a lot less money to spend on some of the social programs that Biden wants to pursue, like paid leave. And so we have some replacement components to come up with some of the money to cover most of the Build Back Better agenda, but they're inferior to where we started, which were substantial tax rate increases on both corporations and individuals.
So Stephen, let me ask you about one of the pay-fors that's been somewhat controversial, and that is the beefing up, if I can put it that way, of the IRS. So we collect more of the taxes that are owed. We're, I think, still waiting for the Congressional Budget Office to tell us how much revenue that will really garner. What is your take on that? Is there a lot of money there to be realized from just making people pay the taxes they already owe?
Well, there is a sizable tax gap between what is owed and what is paid and collected, but it's really hard to close that tax gap. And so the Biden administration proposed a couple of key components. One was to give the IRS $80 billion more, and the second was to implement new reporting schemes, bank reporting on accounts of every person and business in America. The first is still alive, giving the IRS $80 billion more, and the Congressional Budget Office has signaled that will raise on net $120 billion, gross $200 minus the $80 billion spent. Biden suggests that on net there will be $400 billion raised, largely because many Americans might be scared of the IRS having more money and report more taxes. I think that's quite speculative, and CBO has signaled for quite a while that the president's plan will be short in terms of the revenue that he anticipates by at least a couple $100 billion. And the reporting proposal, that's been dropped also, apparently been dropped. That ran into a lot of resistance because it appeared to intrude on a lot of personal and business accounts.
Stephen, a subject of great